Khalil al-Hayya, Hamas's chief negotiator, announces what could mark the most significant turning point in Gaza since the war began. The weapons of the resistance are a red line. They are linked to the existence of the occupation and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. If the occupation remains, it will remain a weapon for the people and the state, protecting their resources and rights. The statement was both defiant and declarative. For nearly 2 years, Hamas had insisted that any ceasefire must preserve its right to arm itself, a clause fiercely rejected by Israel. Yet on this March night, al-Hayya suggested a different tone, one of closure, of assurance that the fighting was finally over. Speaking to Al Jazeera, he claimed Hamas had received guarantees from mediators, chiefly Egypt, Qatar and the United States, that Israel would cease offensive operations and that a long-awaited peace roadmap was already underway. 2 days ago, we received a proposal from the mediating brothers in Egypt and Qatar. We dealt with it positively and approved it. We hope that the occupation will not obstruct it and thwart the mediators' efforts. The proposal he refers to is part of a broader framework known as the Gaza Reconstruction and Security Guarantee Initiative, drafted over months of intense talks between Cairo, Doha and Washington. It includes a 4-stage plan, a complete Israeli military withdrawal from densely populated zones, the release of remaining hostages, the deployment of a multinational monitoring mission, and an internationally supervised reconstruction fund worth nearly $50 billion. The United States and Qatar have reportedly given written assurances to both parties that any breach would trigger diplomatic penalties. 2 days ago, we received a proposal from the mediating brothers in Egypt and Qatar. We dealt with it positively and approved it. We hope that the occupation will not obstruct it and thwart the mediators' efforts. The message is clear. For Hamas, this deal is no longer about temporary ceasefire clauses or humanitarian pauses. It is about a permanent political settlement that recognizes Palestinian sovereignty under international supervision, and yet the stakes are immense. More than 67,000 Palestinians have been killed since October 2023, according to local health authorities. Nearly 90% of Gaza's population remains displaced, its infrastructure flattened, and its economy in ruin. In Washington, officials at the State Department have not publicly confirmed the details of al-Hayya's claims, but 2 senior U.S. officials speaking on background to Reuters and AFP hinted that a comprehensive understanding has been reached on a complete cessation of offensive operations. This marks a dramatic shift in U.S. policy, one that moves from simply brokering temporary truces to actively guaranteeing a final end to hostilities. Behind the scenes, American envoys led by Special Representative Steve Witkoff and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have been in near constant contact with Israeli and Qatari counterparts. Their goal, to bridge the final gaps between Israel's security concerns and Hamas's political demands, chief among them the lifting of the blockade and the return of tens of thousands of displaced families. Analysts say al-Hayya's choice of words is telling. By saying the war has ended, he is not just referring to a pause in fighting, he is declaring a political victory, an end to what Hamas calls the Israeli occupation war. Yet Israel has not made a parallel statement. Officials in Jerusalem remain tight-lipped, only saying that talks continue under US coordination. Within Gaza, celebrations were tempered by uncertainty. People emerged from the rubble of neighborhoods like Shuja'iyya and Rafah, some waving flags, others searching for missing relatives. For them, the words, "the war is over," carry both hope and fear, hope of a return to normalcy, fear of another false start. Internationally, the announcement was met with measured optimism. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi called the move a pivotal moment for regional stability. Qatar's Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said his country would ensure the commitments of all parties. At the United Nations, Secretary-General Antonio Guterres welcomed the development as a significant step toward lasting peace in the Middle East. For the United States, this announcement is also a vindication of months of intensive diplomacy, personally overseen by President Donald Trump, who hailed the agreement as a historic end to a tragic chapter. The so-called Trump Peace Roadmap, a 20-point framework combining ceasefire, reconstruction and hostage release, has now been endorsed by nearly all regional players, including Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Yet critics warn that the underlying issues remain unresolved: the status of Jerusalem, the future of Hamas as a governing authority, and the question of Palestinian unity between Gaza and the West Bank. In Tel Aviv, protests erupted outside the Defense Ministry, with families of soldiers and hostages demanding clarity on what Israel had agreed to. Inside the Knesset, lawmakers from the opposition accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of surrendering to US pressure. But within Gaza's ruins, the announcement was met with quiet tears and muted celebrations. After 2 years of siege, the sound of artillery had finally fallen silent. In Beirut and Amman, crowds gathered to celebrate what they called the end of Gaza's longest war. In Washington, the Pentagon confirmed that US forces stationed in the eastern Mediterranean had been placed on monitoring status only, marking the first drawdown of American naval readiness in the region since October 2023. Meanwhile, in Doha, Khalil al-Hayya continued to give interviews, urging Palestinians to prepare for national reconstruction and unity. Political analysts say his tone suggests a shift within Hamas itself, from a resistance movement to a political entity seeking international recognition. The group has signalled its readiness to join a transitional unity government with Fatah under Egyptian supervision. If realised, this would be the first such government in over a decade. Regional leaders have also been quick to respond. Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian called the ceasefire a victory for the Palestinian people and for Islamic solidarity. The European Union issued a statement welcoming the cessation of hostilities and the commitment to reconstruction. Under the new agreement, aid corridors are set to open across Rafah and Kerem Shalom, allowing up to 600 trucks a day carrying food, fuel and medical supplies. UN officials say the first convoys could arrive within 72 hours if the truce holds. The plan also calls for a joint US Gulf financing mechanism to oversee the $50 billion Gaza rebuild fund, with priority given to housing, healthcare and infrastructure. International financial institutions, including the World Bank and the Islamic Development Bank, are expected to play supervisory roles. But beyond the figures and statements, the human impact is staggering. In Gaza City and Khan Yunis, doctors speak of operating without electricity for months. Parents describe burying children in makeshift graves. For them, the word peace still feels fragile, almost unbelievable. As the world waits for official confirmation from Israel, the eyes of millions remain fixed on Cairo and Doha, where the signing of a formal peace accord is expected within days. For now, the words of Khalil al-Hayya resonate far beyond the walls of the Al Jazeera studio. The war is over. Whether that promise endures will depend not just on the leaders who sign agreements, but on the millions of Palestinians and Israelis who must now live the reality of its aftermath. In a region where wars rarely end with words alone, this moment, March 29, 2025, stands as a test of faith and resolve. From Doha to Gaza, from Washington to Tel Aviv, the world listens closely to a single sentence and waits to see if it finally means what it says. The weapons of the resistance are a red line. They are linked to the existence of the occupation, Israel, and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. If the Israeli occupation remains, 2 days ago, we received a proposal from the mediating brothers in Egypt and Qatar. We dealt with it positively and approved it. We hope that the occupation Israel